The Instagram DM Carlos Alcaraz sent to Coco Gauff in 2019, which she ghosted. Carlos Alcaraz and Coco Gauff are arguably the two biggest stars that tennis has to offer. And, luckily for the sport, they are both only just getting started. With huge global appeal at the ages of just 22 and 21 respectively, their profiles could help catapult tennis up alongside some of the most followed sports in the world. What aids this notion is the fact that, whenever the two are together, they seem to get on brilliantly. However, that was not always the case. Why Coco Gauff ignored Carlos Alcaraz in 2019? It was actually at Wimbledon just last year where Gauff spoke about the rocky start to their relationship, which actually led to the American ignoring Alcaraz's initial attempt to make contact. After her breakthrough tournament at the All England Club in 2019, where she beat Venus Williams on her way to the fourth round, she claimed that the six-time Grand Slam champion actually sent her a message that she never replied to. Gauff claimed, "I think I did well at Wimbledon in 2019, and Alcaraz DM'd me saying, 'Hey Coco, do you remember me? Because we won the Junior Fed Cup at the same time, both our countries, and I didn't remember him. So I didn't respond, obviously, like 4 or 5, or maybe 6 years later," the 21-year-old recalled in Paris. He won the US Open. Then I DM'd congratulations. But if you look at our DMs, our spread is like, "Hey, do you remember me?" and me DMing his congratulations. I felt bad that I didn't respond. How many Grand Slam titles do Carlos Alcaraz and Coco Gauff have? Whilst it could be attributed to the gulf in quality depth between the men's and women's game, Alcaraz has been far more successful than Gauff despite being just a year older. Coincidentally, both claimed their maiden major titles at the US Open and at 19 years old, but it's what has followed that has set the elder of the two apart. He has since won 2 Wimbledon titles, 2 French Open titles and another in New York, needing only a triumph in Melbourne to complete the set. Gauff, meanwhile, did claim her second Grand Slam title in 2025, coming from behind in dramatic fashion in the Roland Garros final. In total, they have 8 major titles between them, although they are destined to add many, many more over the next decade or so. Read more. What Carlos Alcaraz said after meeting Rory McIlroy for the first time in 2025. Carlos Alcaraz Coco Gauff. In 2019, the internet was still young enough to believe in innocence, and 2 teenagers were busy becoming legends without yet knowing how heavy the word legend would someday feel. Instagram, that glowing hallway of mirrors and moments, was where the message lived, or rather, where it briefly breathed before vanishing into the soft blue silence of being unread forever. Carlos Alcaraz was 16. Coco Gauff was 15. The world knew them as promise, as headlines in waiting, as names commentators pronounced carefully, as if saying them too loudly might rush the future. But on Instagram, none of that mattered. On Instagram, you could still be just a kid with a phone, a verified account, and a flicker of courage. Carlos stared at the screen longer than he would ever admit. The phone was warm in his hand, not from use but from nerves. He had typed and erased the message 3 times already. Each version sounded wrong. Too formal and he felt ancient. Too casual and it felt careless. Emojis? No, definitely no emojis. Maybe one emoji? He deleted it again. The message, when it finally went out, was simple, polite, almost shy. "Hey Coco, congrats on your season. Hope training's going well." Smiling face with smiling eyes. He read it once more before pressing send, then immediately regretted the smiley face. He placed the phone face down on the bed as if gravity might pull the message back into his possession. It didn't. It was gone, floating now in the digital space between continents, time zones, and 2 rapidly accelerating careers. Coco never saw it. Or maybe she did, but not in the way messages are meant to be seen. Her phone was a crowded place. Notifications stacked like laundry you swear you'll fold later. Coaches. Sponsors. Family group chats. Friends from school who wanted proof she was still real. Journalists pretending not to be journalists. Fans who felt like they knew her because they'd watched her grow up on center courts and highlight reels. The message from Carlos arrived quietly, without urgency, without fireworks. It slipped into the requests folder like a note passed under a door no one was checking. If Coco had seen it in that moment, she might have smiled. She might have thought, oh, that's nice. She might have typed back something equally polite, equally small, a bridge made of words that neither of them yet knew how to cross. But life does not pause for politeness. Coco was busy learning how to carry expectation without letting it bend her spine. She was learning how to lose matches under stadium lights and still sleep afterward. She was learning how to be 15 in a world that demanded she be timeless. So the message waited. And waiting in the digital age is a strange kind of erasure. Days passed. Then weeks. Carlos checked his phone less and less. The blue checkmarks never appeared. No scene. No reply. Just silence, which in the language of the internet is translated immediately and unfairly as rejection. He told himself it didn't matter. It was nothing. Just a message. He had matches to win, forehands to sharpen, a future that didn't have time for awkward maybes. Still, every now and then, usually late at night after training, he would think about it. Not the message itself, but the space around it. The unanswered question mark hanging in the air like a ball that never came back over the net. Ghosted. It's a dramatic word for something so small. Yet ghosts are never about size. They are about absence. Years later, people would laugh about it. Coco would tell the story with a grin, shaking her head, calling it accidental, harmless, funny in hindsight. Carlos would smile too, because by then smiling was easy. They had both grown into themselves, into champions, into athletes whose lives were too full to be haunted by a missed notification. But in 2019, it mattered in a quiet way. Because that message was not about romance or ego or fame. It was about recognition. One young player seeing another and thinking, you're here too. You're walking this strange path with me. The ghosting wasn't cruel. It wasn't intentional. It was simply the byproduct of speed, of how fast their lives were moving, how quickly childhood was slipping through their fingers like clay dust. Instagram keeps no record of unread dreams. There is no archive for what might have been said, no trophy for conversations that never started. The message remains, or doesn't, depending on the whims of servers and updates, but its meaning has already dissolved into memory. What remains is the irony. Two of the greatest players of their generation, connected by a few inches of glass and a shared understanding of pressure, missed each other entirely in that moment. Not because they didn't care, but because they cared about too many things at once. In tennis, a fraction of a second can decide a point. In life, a fraction of attention can decide a story. The DM Carlos sent didn't change history. It didn't need to. It simply reminds us that before the trophies, before the rivalries, before the cameras learned their best angles, they were just kids typing carefully, hoping not to sound stupid, hoping, quietly, to be seen.